Well, let's go straight to Downing Street now. And John is there for us this morning with all the very latest developments. And John, new jobs all round.
There are, aren't they? But a rather unexpected sequence of events last night because, following the resignation of Rishi Sunak, Nadhim Zahawi has been appointed as the new chancellor. And we can speak to him now live on BBC Breakfast for the first time in your new role. Congratulations on the new job, Chancellor. Are you getting used to that new title?
Thank you, John. It's the first full day of work today, so my focus is very much around making sure that we rebuild the economy after the pandemic and, of course, war raging on our continent and the battle against inflation, and grow the economy. You know, we've got good growth this year, second fastest growth in the G7, but also in 2024 returning to growth, but a challenge in 2023, which I am focused on at the moment, because inflation is, if allowed to get out of control, deeply damaging, especially for the most disadvantaged. You know, we've delivered today, my first day in the job, the biggest personal tax cut in a decade, £330 for 30 million people. That's a good start, and I thank Rishi Sunak for everything he's done.
OK, well, look, we will talk about economic policy in a moment, particularly cost of living, because it matters massively to all our viewers who are watching. But to start with, can we just talk about last night, how you ended up in this position of Chancellor? Because I suspect that the circumstances surrounding your promotion are not exactly what you would have chosen. You were in there with the Prime Minister last night as these resignations came through, another crisis for Boris Johnson. What was his mood? What was he thinking?
His focus was very much around the second half of this Parliament on really delivery. So how do we rebuild the economy as we have now come out of the global pandemic, and of course, how do we make sure the economy is resilient with the energy price shock because of Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine, and how do we deal with inflation as well as bearing down on taxes? So the first personal tax cut in a decade delivered today. What more can we do to make sure we continue to be on the side of people? You know, what we've put in place is £37 billion of help over the next 12 months because of people who are struggling with their weekly shop, with their energy bills. That's what I will continue to do. So we talked about making sure
I'm really fascinated to know what's going through. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm really fascinated to know what is going through Boris Johnson's head in there, because he gets these letters, blistering letters from Rishi Sunak and Sajid Javid, attacking his honesty and his competence and his integrity and the trust they have on him. Surely, was he looking at himself? Was he asking any questions about the way he does things, or committing to behaving in a different way? Was there any self-examination at all last night?
Well, the first thing to say on that, John, is that the Prime Minister did that interview and said, look, with the benefit of hindsight, he made a mistake to appoint Chris Pincher to the role of Deputy Chief. And he's right to apologise. We make decisions, you know this, John, at warp speed as cabinet ministers, as Chancellor, as a Prime Minister. The Prime Minister was at the Commonwealth Summit, at the NATO Summit, at the G7 Summit, and he's right to say, look, I made a mistake. I'm sorry for that, and I, take collective responsibility. I'm sorry that we made that mistake, but as I say, we make decisions at warp speed, and we don't always get them right. The way I would sum up the Prime Minister's focus for you is in 3 words: delivery, delivery, delivery. He wants to make sure that each and every one of us is delivering for the British people. Rebuilding the economy and growing the economy is my task, and this is the first day in the job. I'll be very happy to come back once I've reviewed everything to share with you the evidence as to how we're going to continue to bear down on inflation, how we're going to continue to focus on rebuilding the economy and bringing taxes down. Today is the first personal tax cut in a decade, as I said.
You're a man who watches public opinion. You set up YouGov, didn't you? The opinion polling organisation. A YouGov poll out this morning says 69% of the public don't want Boris Johnson in there any longer. I just wonder, I mean, you've taken on this job, you're backing him, but I mean, you've effectively saved him, haven't you? Because if he hadn't been able to fill that job, or if you'd walked out as well, he probably wouldn't be in there now. I mean, it's a real responsibility you've got.
John, you will know that polls are a snapshot of public opinion at that moment. At the moment, look at the people who are egging us on to be divided and to change leader. It's people like Alistair Campbell. And all I would say to my colleagues is, wherever Alistair Campbell is, we need to be on the other side of that argument. We need to unite. We need to focus on delivery. If we do that, John, and we do it well, whether it be in my work at the Treasury, of course, the work that the Foreign Secretary and the Defence Secretary are doing in terms of national security, the work of the Home Secretary in terms of security at home, safer streets, or in the NHS, with Steve Barclay cutting down those waiting lists, or of course education, the skills agenda, T-levels will be as famous as A-levels, those runways for people's careers to take off on. If we focus on delivery over the second half of this Parliament, people will judge us on that, and I'm convinced that if we deliver on that, people will feel very differently in 2 years' time to the snapshot poll that you've just mentioned that YouGov, my old company, delivered.
Boris Johnson is thought to want to cut taxes. A lot of Conservative backbenchers want you to cut taxes. How likely is that going to be, Chancellor? Are you looking to cut taxes more? Is that going to be one of your priorities?
So today was the first personal tax cut in a decade. I will look at everything. Nothing is off the table. The Prime Minister wants to make sure that we have fiscal discipline. I share that focus with him because if we let inflation get out of control, it is deeply damaging for those very same people that we're trying to help today with that £37 billion of help over the next 12 months. But of course, I will be looking at where else can I make sure the economy remains competitive and dynamic with our European neighbours and of course the rest of the world as well. Nothing is off the table, John.
OK, but we know that from his resignation letter yesterday that there were real differences, weren't there, between Rishi Sunak there and the Prime Minister over things like tax cuts. It sounds like Boris Johnson might be more likely to get his way on having tax cuts with you as his Chancellor.
I will be the evidence-led Chancellor as I was the evidence-led Education Secretary, and I will review and look at everything. I know that at the moment the country's hurting. We're in a tough place because of the spike in energy prices, the global battle against inflation that's raging in America and Germany and in Canada as well as in the UK. We've got to bear down on inflation. That means being fiscally responsible across departmental spending. You know that, John. The debt we're servicing this year will be at 83 billion. Last year it was at 20 billion. So, a 4 times increase in debt servicing. That's important to remember. That's the sort of the backdrop, the canvas with which I am at the moment responsible. But of course, I will also want to make sure that if you talked about corporation tax, I think earlier, companies make investment decisions over the long term. One of the taxes they can compare globally is corporation tax, and I want to take a very careful look at all the measures that I can bring to bear down on inflation, but also return to that dynamic economy that delivers growth.
So it sounds to me like you're thinking more about corporation tax cuts than income tax cuts.
I am in my first day in the job, John. It would be very wrong to
just looking for a snapshot. We've heard about snapshots. Give us a snapshot.
I will review everything. And I will look at everything. And I will happily come back on your programme and share the evidence and share my strategy. That's the responsible thing to do for a Chancellor.
OK, well, as part of the economic picture, we're also talking about pay, aren't we? Public sector pay. I understand that you were backing the teachers getting a 9% pay rise. I just wonder, how is that going to go down now you've got this new job in the Treasury? They won't necessarily like that because they're going to worry that's going to push up pay right across the board and then potentially fuel inflation.
Well, my submission to the pay review body was to say we need to get teachers' starting salary to £30,000, and that's where the 9% pay rise will deliver on that this year, and 7.7% next year. And of course, for more senior teachers, my submission to the pay review body was 5% over 2 years. We will look across government, across departments, at what the pay review bodies will recommend, and I'd be happy to come on your programme and share with you my thinking as to where we land on public sector pay. The thing to remember for all of us collectively is, if inflation gets out of hand and we allow discipline to slip in any way on pay, public sector or private sector, of course, and companies are making those decisions now, then we will fuel inflation further, and we need to bear down on inflation, because that is the greatest risk, especially to the most vulnerable in our society.
OK, so as a chancellor now, are you still saying 9% for teachers?
So what I submitted as Secretary of State for Education was very much the manifesto pledge that both myself and the Chancellor and the Prime Minister, quite rightly, had signed off, and we will deliver on that pledge. That is a promise I make teachers.
That could be difficult when it comes to your negotiations and your dealings with other groups, though, isn't it, within the NHS? I know you'll say it's set by, independent bodies, but there's a politics to this as well. And when you're dealing with the rail unions and the NHS and local government workers, if you've said 9% for teachers, you know what they're going to say as well.
Well, let's look at what the pay review bodies recommend, and I would very happily share the evidence, across the economy, across departments with you. The most important thing is to remain disciplined, and our pledge to teachers was very much something I had agreed with the Chancellor in the spending review, so I wasn't moving outside of my spending envelope in any way.
OK, well, we'll let you get back to all that evidence you've got to look at. What happens with you today? Do you move in next door in the next few hours? What happens?
So the first thing to do is after I finish this round, I've got a few more interviews to do, is to get back to the office and start work on rebuilding the economy and growing the economy. That's what your viewers, the nation, would want me to focus on. And then, of course, moving into the flat, and we'll come after that.
There might be another vacancy soon at number 10 itself.
The people who are egging us on to turn on each other, to form a circular firing squad, are people like Alistair Campbell. And I can tell you, wherever Alistair Campbell is, no Conservative should be in the same place.
There's quite a lot saying the same as Alistair Campbell, though, this morning on your side. Nadhim Zahawi, Chancellor, thanks for joining us here on Breakfast this morning. Our first interview with you in your new job.